All right, everybody, welcome to Head Kick Audio. I'd like to welcome a very special guest. I have LFA Featherweight Michael Stack, who he's got a fight booked, okay? Opponent, they're still working on it or they figured it out, but we're not 100% sure. But he's going to be competing at LFA in Colorado on October 22nd. We'll get the number. It'll be in the description of the video. Now, Mr. Stack, you are 5-1 as a pro. You train out of trials and a couple other gyms, and we'll get into that in a minute. But right now, the sole focus is October 22nd. So how are preparations going for the opponent who we're not really 100% sure what's going on there, but how are preparations for you going?
Well, originally LFA offered me a guy from Idaho. He was a Idaho wrestler. I think he was D1 wrestler. I'm not entirely sure about that, but that was about 2 weeks ago, and so I've been in camp going on probably 10 weeks from the October 22nd date. So I've been in camp for a while. Originally, we were ready for a wrestler. He said that it wasn't enough time for him to prepare, so he backed out. Now we got this new guy, Jackson Philo. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he's a Brazilian dude. He's fought on LFA before. He fought a guy. His last one was a loss. And so I think, I signed my contract. I'm not 100% sure what's going on with that, but that's kind of where we're at. So as far as preparation goes for that, we're kind of we watched his games, his footage a little bit, and I think now I'm kind of preparing for this opponent. So that's where we're at as far as that goes.
Okay, now when you switch, when opponents drop out or they can't make the weight and so they pull out, and these types of situations, they happen all the time in MMA, right? So you never know who you're really fighting until they get locked in the cage with you, right?
Right.
Especially because guys are now turning into just all-out gangsters and taking fights in less than 24 hours notice. So you never know who you're going to fight until that cage door closes behind the two of you. So in situations like this can't become more about, what I'm going to do and less about what they're going to do.
I've always kind of trained that way. I've always thought that being the best, most well-rounded fighter that I can be is, the best move going forward to be the best, period. You know what I mean? Like if you look at the champs in the UFC, those guys are well-rounded. They're great everywhere, even, guys, you could make an argument that Khabib's more of a wrestler, but his wrestling sets up his striking. You know what I mean? So he's a well-rounded fighter. And I think that if you want to be a champ or, you want to compete at the highest level, then you need to be a well-rounded fighter and you need to constantly be improving your entire game. So that is definitely what I always do and what I plan on doing. But as far as working coming up with a game plan and stuff, like Mike Tyson said it best, right? He said, you got a game plan until you get punched in the face, right? And then it all goes out the window. But to kind of have a game plan, understand your opponent's weaknesses, but not sticking to that entirely, in the sense like where you get into the fight and say you do have to change on the dot, like as things progress, it's not going the way you planned. You have to be able to adapt. That's part of fighting as well. But to know your opponent's weaknesses, I mean, we all have weaknesses. We all have things that you can take advantage of. So, you do put that in your plan a little bit as well, for sure.
Now, I think your only weakness that I have seen thus far is you like to try and finish guys and you like to be exciting. God damn you. How dare you have that weakness? You know what I'm saying? Like, look, okay, you're pretty successful as an MMA fighter, right? And I say pretty successful because I think in your 10 or 11 fights so far, you've only lost one. And the guy that you lost to ended up going to the UFC, right? That's not bad. That's not bad at all. And the fight was exciting. And that guy also known for exciting fights, right? But in that loss, right, it seems like you kind of took that in the cage. You took it like you could see on your face that it hurt, right? But you took it in stride. Now, what did you learn from that loss? Because you've since bounced back with another win and looking to continue the momentum on October 22nd.
So on that loss, I'm pretty frustrated with that fight. To be honest with you, I'm still frustrated with it. Like Kai's a good competitor. He's a good athlete. I've watched him in the UFC. He's had some success. Personally, I think that as far as damage goes in that fight, I did the most damage. I think I hurt him more. I rocked him more than he hurt me. But where I think the main issue that I had in that fight was I didn't take everything, the whole MMA game, and apply it in that fight. I hurt him in the second round really bad, and I hurt him right in the beginning of the third round really bad, and I got into kind of a brawler mentality, and he took me down, and he kind of held me on the cage. Didn't do any damage there, right? But that control and the length of time that he was able to establish that control solidified that round for him. You know, you hear it was who are the two commentators? It's Crook, and at that time it was Pat Miletich. Pat actually thought I won that round or that fight. You know, as far as I would actually disagree as far as scoring goes. I think I agree with the scoring the way it went, but as far as damage goes, I do believe I hurt him more, and I think he was closer to being out of that fight than I was. If that went a couple more rounds, you know, we'll see. You know, it could be a different story. But looking back on that now, I realized that I kind of got too far into the brawler mentality, like let's bang, let's get it. You know what I mean? And he realized he was not winning those exchanges anymore. In the first round, he definitely did. He won those exchanges. I started figuring it out. And once I figured it out, he realized that it was time to adapt. And he changed his game plan and took me down. And that's what won the fight for him. And so now when I think about fighting, you have to realize that you only have a certain amount of time in the cage. And you have to be, it's still a sport. So you have to be scoring, right? If it's a street fight, you got all day pretty much, right? You can, and with a street fight, you need a finish to win. This is a sport. So it being a sport, you have to constantly be scoring, and you also should constantly be looking for a finish, but always trying to win as a match. You know, you have to have both. You have to have the fighter mindset, but also the competitor mindset. And so that's kind of what I've realized from that fight is this is still a sport. That being said, it is a fight, right? But there's rules to it. So I think that's kind of what I've learned. And, you know, at that point in time, I think had I won that fight, I would probably be in the UFC because he went to the UFC right after that. But, you know, that just means I wasn't ready, and I've gotten a lot better since then. And so I'm excited to show that in this next fight.
Well, you know how some people say they wish they could reach through the phone and choke somebody?
Yeah.
You've heard that expression before? Now, just follow me here, right? Just follow me. Okay. I have never wanted to reach through a phone so bad, not to choke you, but to get a little bit of that off your shoulder, because for somebody to admit that they agreed with the scoring in favor of their opponent is like, that's fucking badass. That's balls. That's fucking like, that's real. You know what I mean? I've never wanted to reach through a phone and just be like, hey, that's fucking sick. You know what I mean? Like, you don't get that, especially from fighters. Fighters are like, nope, I won that fight. You ask Diego, he beat what was that guy's name? They fought in New Mexico. Of course, I'm gonna forget. Well, it was the fight that he definitely lost, but he won on the scorecards.
Okay.
But anyway,
I don't know which one you're talking about either. I can't think of it either.
I know. I do this all the time.
Old Diego or new Diego or old Diego or most recent Diego?
This was, I think, before that weird guy. It was
Okay.
before. I can't remember that fucking guy's name. It'll come to me eventually, and hopefully it does before the end of the interview, so I could yell it real loud and look like a fucking buffoon because I'm cool with that, right? But like I said, you understand the sport, and like that's just cool, right? I just wanted to point that out. Like,
Well,
you
I
know,
will also admit though, as a caveat to that, in my last fight, I fought Jordan Mappa. Okay. And this one thing about the sport that it is kind of subjective. You know, like I mentioned to you that Pat Miletich that I won. Personally, the way I score things, I can see it going to Kai 100%. And the way I would have scored the fight the same way, in my opinion. But I fucking did the exact same thing that actually with more damage to Jordan Mappa that Kai did to me in the third. In the first, I did that to Mappa, and I still somehow lost the first round. And I took him down, controlled him, and I actually threw some punches and scored some damage, and they still gave it to him. So you also have to understand that this sport is very subjective, and that depending on who you are, what type of judge you are, can determine. That's why also you have to be searching for these finishes. At the same time, though, sometimes that's not always the case. That's not always possible. You're fighting high level competitors, and you need to be able to just know that you have to always be scoring and pushing forward and having dominant position, even if you're not necessarily finishing the fight. So that's just kind of what I've noticed with the sport. You know what I mean? So I didn't mean to kind of take that pat on the back away from you, but I've noticed, there's so much to it. So much to it.
well, and also one thing that I've noticed, right? I competed amateur. I didn't make it to the pros. I wasn't as good as the Stacks of the world, right? But you're fighting your opponent. You're fighting yourself, right? But you're also fighting those four fucking guys or three guys that are judging the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to, if you don't finish your opponent, you have to prove to them that you won.
Right.
And you don't get to know this is where open scoring would be kind of cool, right? But you don't get to know where you're at until the end, right?
And actually, my last fight was open scoring. Kansas, we had open scoring, so that's how I knew that I actually lost the first round. I remember thinking to myself, I fucking lost that first round. I was like, what? I took him down. I took him down a couple times. He got up, and I took him down again. And then towards the end of the round, I started doing a lot of damage to him. To me personally, I would have scored it for me, being unbiased. But in the moment, I even thought it was closer than when I watched it back. I was like, no way. I would absolutely scored that one for me. And I try to be unbiased. I was fair with the Kamaka scoring, I believe. So I don't know. It's weird. Judges are weird, man. You depending on what they are looking for could make or break the fight for you. So
You know what I want to do? I want to become a judge, right? And the only way I'm going to score a fight for you is if you get your ass kicked. That's it. I'm just going to be that one judge that just, fucking fuck everybody else. Do you see that guy? He was punching that dude with his face. You know what I mean? Like the Kung Pao, that was my nuts to your fist style. How'd you like it? That's the type of scoring that I want.
He was smacking his hands with his face. He was doing some damage.
I'm telling you. That is it. No.
So
In all
are you more
fairness,
like a pride style type of guy? Like the way you would score a fight, do you go off of damage? Do you go off control? What are you kind of looking for when you determine a winner of a fight? So pride.
me?
Yeah, I mean,
Are
like
you
if you
asking
think
me?
about pride, yeah, you personally, because I mean, if you I'll talk my coach, for example, Ryan Schultz. Okay, he kind of has the old school mentality. Damage is what's most important. Like say you take me down and control me for most of the round, but you don't do any damage, and I get up and start rocking your ass. He thinks the guy that rocked your ass won that fight. Pat Miletich is kind of like that as well, because those are the old school type fighters, right? However, we've kind of moved forward into the more sport type of scoring, the way the UFC generally scores And generally, the way they do is they go off of damage, they go off of control, and just positioning and things that type of way, which I agree with as a sport, right? So, thinking about you, where do you fall in that spectrum?
Okay. Well, I had no idea this was the Steve interview, but we'll go ahead, right? We'll go ahead. I like that you turned the tables, and I will answer your question with another. No, I'm just kidding. So for me, right, it's the rules state like striking and grappling, not striking then grappling. Striking and grappling are together, and then aggression and cage control are together, but they're second, right?
Mm.
So if I'm walking forward and all I'm doing is walking into your hands, that doesn't mean that I won the fight.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like when Nick Diaz and Carlos Condit fought. Nick Diaz was coming forward the entire fucking fight, but Condit was tagging him, circling and out, and resetting. That was the whole fight. The whole fight was Nick Diaz walking forward. I'm not saying that Nick Diaz didn't land, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But the fight was scored for Condit, and I agreed, although Diaz was coming forward the whole time. So
exactly. But yeah,
it's got to be and. For me, damage versus control, right?
Mm-hmm.
It depends on the amount of damage, and it also depends on the type of control. If the dude is just fucking laying on you, I mean, he's controlling you. Your job is to get up, right?
Exactly.
But if he's laying on you for half the round, but when you're standing up, you're beating the shit out of him. Well, that control isn't worth more than the damage or the striking that you did. Mm-hmm. So it's case to case, right? Because if I'm controlling you, getting you in submission hold after submission hold, and then you get up and you rock me, right? But I don't fall down, then that round's a lot closer than if I just held you down. You know what I mean? But if you knock me down, that's where a lot of the judging, in my opinion, is from that old school boxing, right? If you get knocked down and you don't knock your opponent down, but it was pretty close, the guy that got the knockdown is going to win that round. You know what I mean? So, like I said, it's from fight to fight. Every fight is different, but I think it has to be like, it can't just be control. Control doesn't do it for me, especially if when it's in the stand-up, well, the only reason why you're controlling me is because you took me down because I was whooping your ass. You know what I mean? If I'm whooping your ass and then you take me down and you just hold me and we have a dumbass fucking ref in there that doesn't stand it up, then okay, you won that round because I'm a little bitch and just held you down. You know what I mean? And I will score it that way. But if I'm holding you down and I'm doing ground and pound and it's meaningful, or if I'm getting you in submissions and it's meaningful, you know what I mean? Then that round is a lot closer than just me laying on top of you.
Mm. Yeah.
Which I would never do because, I mean, you're a professional. You kick my ass. But that's where I stand. You know what I mean? It's got to be, it's got to mean something. Otherwise, it's meaningless.
Right. I agree with you. No, I agree 100%. 100%.